Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. What if the key choices of your life, the career you choose, the one you love, the dangers you take or shun, are not decided with cautious consideration but in a flash? Yes, only a blink. Welcome to the hidden universe of rapid cognition, where your brain makes lightning-fast judgments, faster than logic, faster than reason, yet often more accurate than both, in blink. The power of thinking without thinking. Malcolm Gladwell doesn't just undermine the myth that good decisions result from lengthy, rational consideration, he destroys it. He introduces us to the intriguing world of snap judgments, instinctive gut feelings, and unconscious thought, revealing that what we tend to write off as irrational is really a sophisticated mode of intelligence that we do so at our own risk. Have you ever shaken hands with someone and immediately sensed you couldn't trust them, and later discovered you were correct? Have you ever acted on something without even realizing why you were doing it, only to find later in retrospect it was the perfect thing to do? That's not chance. That's the power of your adaptive unconscious, a thought superpower that's working beneath your radar. Gladwell's own journey is not a matter of guesswork or of gambles. It's a matter of unlocking the secret workings of your first impressions and giving them superpowers. He uses science, psychology, history, and anecdotal experience to remind us that the mind, in its quietest and fastest moments, is smarter than we are giving it credit for, with dramatic anecdotes. A marriage counselor who can foretell divorce in minutes, an art historian who can identify a forgery in seconds, a firefighter who feels danger without cause. Gladwell demonstrates that intuition is not magical, it's quantifiable, and it's forceful. But there is a caveat as well. Blink thinking can be tainted, prejudices, stereotypes, and substandard training can muddy our fast decisions. So, the challenge is not to abandon intuition, it's to train it, trust it, and hone it. This book is an invitation to resist discounting the still, small voice inside, to trust the authority of knowing without knowing how you know. It's not less thinking, it's smarter thinking, quicker thinking, truer thinking, so buckle up, because after reading this book, you'll never glance at a decision or a flash of instinct the same way again. It takes just a blink to transform your life. Part 1. The Power of Thinking Without Thinking. Theme: Behind the Curtain of Instant Intuition. Chapter: The Statue That Shouldn't Exist. Imagine it's 1983. The J. Paul Getty Museum in California is presented with an ancient statue, a kouros, a beautifully preserved Greek sculpture dating back to the 6th century BC. The museum, overjoyed, has it tested for months. Carbon dating, geological tests, historical authentication, and all comes back positive, so they purchase it smugly. Then the experts come along, not with labs, but with gut. They get a walk-by art historian eyeing the statue and muttering, "It just feels wrong." Another paces around the statue and says, "It looks too fresh." One goes so far as to say, "It gives me a visceral sense of being fake." Guess what? They were correct. The statue was a forgery. How? How did these experts, without machines or data, know what months of science overlooked? This is the essential enigma Gladwell dissects in Blink. Chapter 1. The Power of Thin Slicing. Malcolm Gladwell describes this effect as thin slicing, our capacity to form rapid opinions on very little data. The concept sounds nearly magical. In an instant, the brain sifts through mountains of input and reaches a conclusion that is as good, or better, than one made after hours of weighing options. So how does it work? Gladwell presents John Gottman, a psychologist known for being able to predict divorce with eerily accurate results. Gottman interviews couples discussing any subject. Love or marriage are not requirements, and observes only 2 minutes of tape. He then codes for facial expression, tone of voice, choice of words, body posture. Based on this brief sample, he can forecast with more than 90% accuracy whether or not a couple will be married 15 years later. It's ridiculous, but it works. Our brain, below the level of consciousness, possesses an adaptive unconscious, a strong system that evaluates, analyzes, concludes, and acts at lightning speed. We typically refer to it as intuition. It's not guessing, it's a type of rapid, quiet thinking that is shaped by experience and pattern recognition. So is intuition always reliable? Not exactly. Behind the blink, the good and the bad. Don't be taken in by snap judgments, Gladwell cautions. Thin slicing can get us to brilliance, or bias. The same unconscious that allows an experienced firefighter to feel out a concealed fire can also lead a police officer to mistake a harmless movement for a threat. So what makes good intuition different from bad intuition? The distinction, Gladwell contends, is training and setting. Professionals who have encountered thousands of cases, such as Gottman or an ER physician, develop their instincts on profound familiarity. Their gut has experience to rest upon. But snap judgments can betray us when prejudice and fear take charge in high-stress or unfamiliar situations. Part 2. Theme: When thin slicing turns into misjudging. Chapter 2. The locked door. What we can't explain. Let's begin with a mystery. You go into a shop and buy a black t-shirt rather than a red one. You have a drink you've never had before. Somebody says, "Why did you take that?" And you reply, "I just preferred it." But what that actually signifies, Gladwell writes, you likely have no idea. Here, he pulls the curtain off the locked door of the unconscious mind, the notion. We make choices based on systems within the brain we don't even know ourselves, and then we come up with reasons why we made those choices. It's not deception, it's our brains spinning PR for our gut. The Pepsi challenge problem. For example, Gladwell returns to the timeless marketing war. Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. In blind taste tests, consumers picked Pepsi more. It's sweeter on first sip, but if they consume full cans, consumers still favor Coke, because taste is not simply about taste. It's also about branding, memories, identity, and the subtle emotional signals we can't quite put into words. People decided on Pepsi in a blink. But their actual preference was more nuanced behind that closed door. When we attempt to explain our snap decisions, Gladwell claims, we get it wrong. We unconsciously distort the truth because the unconscious mind operates in ways language can't fully express. The art expert's dilemma. Back to art. Remember the Kura statue from part 1. One art historian came into the room and intuitively felt immediately that the statue was not real, but couldn't say why. That's the crux of this chapter. Professionals tend to know before they can explain why. Their subconscious has registered a pattern. The brain is a pattern-matching machine, conditioning over time to link subtle clues with threat, deception, or genuineness. The issue: we live in a world that requires explanations, and when we attempt to put into words what is in essence nonverbal, we contour our thinking, or worse still, begin to second-guess our own accurate instinct. Chapter 3. The Warren Harding mistake. When instinctive impressions go awry. Let's move now from art to politics, to perhaps the most condemnatory case of poor thin slicing in history. Step forward. Warren G. Harding, tall, good-looking, authoritative, presidential. He resembled a leader, so they elected him. Even though he didn't possess any actual abilities for the position, historians now concur. Harding was one of the worst U.S. presidents. This is the Warren Harding fallacy. When our unconscious mind is charmed by surface judgments and makes a wrong decision. The dangers of first impressions. Gladwell here targets how prejudice distorts thin slicing. Height. CEOs are more likely to be tall statistically, not because tall individuals are more competent, but because tall individuals appear more authoritative. Race and gender. Job interviews, traffic stops, and judicial rulings often rely on instant biases, decisions so quick and reflexive, individuals have no idea they are occurring. Speed dating research. Individuals say they seek one type of partner, but they end up settling for one that is entirely different. Their conscious choice is not what makes their unconscious choice. Briefly, we believe we know better than our instincts, but we frequently are unaware that they have been influenced by stereotypes. The media and cultural conditioning. Can we train our subconscious? Yes, but not easily. Gladwell's great point. You can't simply say to yourself, don't be biased. The unconscious mind doesn't take lectures. It needs to be trained through experience, exposure, and Thinking, he describes an experiment where repeatedly gazing at counterstereotypical pictures, e.g., women scientists, black CEOs, resulted in people actually becoming less biased in knee-jerk reactions. The big insight: our snap judgments can be educated, they can be controlled, but if we don't examine them, they can lead us astray, in love, in leadership, and in life. Part 3. Theme: Mastering the Blink, When Instinct Saves Lives. Chapter 4. Paul Van Riper's Big Victory, the Intuitive Commander. In the scorching Nevada desert, a military exercise, dubbed the Millennium Challenge, is about to take place. The U.S. military, with billions of high-tech dollars at its disposal, simulations, and intelligence software, is about to battle a make-believe foe commanded by a retired Marine, Paul Van Riper. But there is a catch. Van Riper has no use of satellites, no spreadsheets of data, no time to analyze. He relies on his gut, and guess what? He wins in record time. The lesson from the battlefield. Van Riper's victory wasn't luck, it was the victory of instinct over analysis paralysis. Whereas the U.S. side was drowning in data and overthinking, Van Riper drew on his years of experience of pattern recognition, snap decisions, and fast instinct. He acted quickly, unpredictably, and adaptively. He knew what Gladwell wants us to know. In disorder, the thinking brain holds us back. The unconscious keeps us alive. Gladwell believes that analysis paralysis can strangle the very systems which keep us nimble, particularly in crisis situations such as military leadership, ER care, or firefighting. Instinct, when trained, is quicker and wiser than contemplative thought, when less is more. This chapter reinforces a central message of Blink. Additional information does not necessarily result in improved decisions. Gladwell tells us the story of an evaluation for a heart attack in Chicago's Cook County Hospital. Doctors would historically weigh dozens of variables before determining whether a person was having a heart attack, and too often making errors. But a scientist, Brendan Riley, streamlined the process. He narrowed down to only 3 key predictors that accurately forecast heart attacks with much greater precision. By capping data, the physicians made quicker, wiser decisions. The lesson: at times, having too much information befogs your keenness of vision. Chapter 5. Kenna's Dilemma, When Good Instincts Are Sabotaged. And what happens when intuition crashes against the opinion of the masses? Gladwell relates the story of Kenna, a buzz music performer who is beloved by critics and elite producers. Individuals who immediately got him. They heard his music and were like, he's a star. His songs were understated, genre-fusing, sophisticated, but when Kenna underwent market testing, focus groups, questionnaires, and pop radio samples, he flunked. People didn't respond to him in the first 30 seconds. So, record labels passed him up. The cost of measuring the wrong way. Kenna's tale illustrates a gigantic flaw in how we read feedback. First responses from people tend to be perplexity, not dislike, but marketing teams interpreted that as dislike. They had forgotten that intuition is situational. It performs best when the situation is set right and the audience is conditioned. Kenna's ability was understated, and understatements don't cut it in a Blink test. We're warned by Gladwell. Not all instincts are created equal. When we don't have experience or adequate exposure, our snap judgments are suspect. We might think that we're calling a song terrible, a person untrustworthy, or a meal unpalatable just because it's new. The Pepsi versus Coke trap, revisited. Gladwell returns to his previous argument. The flaw in the Pepsi challenge: when they take one gulp, they pick sweet Pepsi, but when they drink an entire can, they pick Coke. This indicates that environment makes a difference. Our instincts are not absolute and change depending on setting, experience, and presentation. The same is true with decision-making in hiring, dating, judgment in being creative, sales pitches. We usually misestimate talent or misread cues because we're too hasty to believe the wrong type of Blink. How to make Blink work for you. This section of Blink doesn't only tell us when thin slicing works, it instructs us on how to make it work better. Limit the noise. Stripped away distractions. Focus on what matters most. Honor expertise. Leverage instinct when informed by experience. Beware overanalysis. Particularly in rapid changing environments, respect context. Recognize that the right instincts require the right environment to shine. Question your snap judgments, particularly when they conflict with greater understanding. Part 4. Theme: Shaping the Unseen, Training Intuition, Fighting Bias. Chapter 6. 7 Seconds in the Bronx, When Snap Judgments Kill. It's nighttime in the South Bronx. Amadou Diallo is a young man standing in his apartment doorway for plainclothes NYPD officers arrive, mistakenly thinking he fits the description of a serial rapist. Seconds go by. 41 shots are fired. Diallo is dead because in under 7 seconds, the officers had made a chain of fatal snap judgments. They had believed he was going for a gun. He was holding a wallet. They had believed he was a threat. He was not. Their instincts let them down. This is where blink becomes hauntingly real. When instinct becomes impulse. Gladwell lays out what went wrong. Stress plus speed equals distorted perception. Groupthink escalated the panic. Racial bias, tacit and untested, crept into the officers' instant decision-making. They didn't mean to do harm, but their unconscious mind, schooled in a culture of fear, perceived danger where none existed. Gladwell's message is urgent and disturbing. In the heat of the moment, our brain reverts to habits. If those habits are infected with bias, tragedy follows. This is not simply about policing, it's about all domains: recruitment, medicine, schools, where our instant reflexes can set people free or restrict people. The power of blind auditions, listening without looking. But now, let's consider hope. Gladwell brings forward the revolutionary tale of the blind orchestra audition. Women were for years hugely underrepresented in professional symphonies. Critics had argued that women didn't have the power or authority of playing. That was until orchestras began holding blind auditions, literally setting up a screen between the musician and the judges. The result: women started getting hired. The ability was always present, but prejudice had tainted judgment. Once it was eliminated, instincts began correcting with reality. This isn't merely a book about music. It's a metaphor for how we can re-engineer systems so that intuition can operate more justly and honestly. The central argument revisited. Gladwell concludes Blink by going back to the grand question: can we trust our instincts? The response is nuanced. Yes. When instincts are honed, experience-based, and used in the correct context. No. When prejudice, fear, or defective systems shape instincts, the unconscious mind is a blessing, but not perfect. It's not magical. It's programmable by culture, experience, repetition. So, Blink's last mission is this: become aware of the unconscious. How to tame your blink. 1. Train your gut. Like a firefighter or ER physician, learn to know the signals that count. 2. Slow down fast thinking. In high-stakes or uncertain instinct situations, leave room for reflection. 3. Design for fairness. Implement blind auditions, anonymous requests, and guidelines-based judgments to minimize bias. 4. Question your first impressions, particularly those pertaining to people, race, gender, or roles. Stop and think. 5. Educate the subconscious. Flood your mind with counter-stereotypic stories, pictures, and experiences, because what you take in is what your brain sees, and how it makes up its mind. Final reflection. The blink within you. Blink isn't about thinking quickly, it's about thinking well. Malcolm Gladwell encourages us to respect the genius of the unconscious mind even as we acknowledge its limitations. You now know that some of the best decisions are made in a flash, that more often than not, more information creates poorer outcomes, that intuition can both be our superpower and saboteur, and that it's our job to shape our instinctive mind. Because each day, in big ways and small, you blink. The question is, what does your blink see, and how do you ensure it sees the truth? Discover more from the book. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz reviews and summaries.